You can start the recording. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everyone. आज का जो हमारा session है, today's session is going to happen with Subhan Ali, and what we are going to discuss today, what are some of the data science career paths that one can choose, and how to prepare for those data science career paths. What sort of skills are needed? So we have with us Subhan Ali from San Francisco Bay Area. And we'll know more about Subhan Ali. So I won't introduce him. I'd like that he can, tell something about himself. And then we'll be having, question and answer session. You can post your questions in the chat box, and then I can also pick up a few questions from there. And if we'll have time, then we can also ask directly questions to Subhan Ali. So let's start this seminar. That the idea that we are trying to promote in Pakistan, that how important it is to enter into data science career. And sometimes people have myths as well around data science career. That's why Adam Kemp has been trying to invite many speakers, many accomplished professionals in data science, and to understand their career path as well as to answer your questions. And the first question that Subhan Ali, welcome to this webinar by Adam Kemp. And we've been talking to you that to seek some time, and it is quite the time difference makes it really complicated, this coordination. And for even people who have joined from Pakistan, this is 10 p.m. It's quite late. So thank you everyone for joining, Subhan Ali and participants as well. So Subhan, I'll start with, if you can just share your career path with us. I understand you were a civil engineer. From civil engineering, you entered into a data science. So if you can, walk us through your career path, that will also help us to understand how traditionally data scientists, enter into this career, and how there are different paths that people usually adopt.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Naveed. So in terms of my professional experience, all of my academic degrees are in civil engineering. I actually worked as a structural engineer for a year in Los Angeles before I went to do my master's and PhD at Stanford. After Stanford, I thought about pursuing a few different paths. One was staying in civil engineering. The other was doing something related to consulting or management consulting. And the last was around going into the technology industry, which obviously is very large in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I kind of knew I didn't want to go back down the path of being a civil engineer. I know that civil engineering is, my father was a civil engineer. A lot of his friends were civil engineers in Pakistan. And I realized from working in the field that, and his experience, that it wasn't something that I don't think I was very enthusiastic about doing. And so for me, the challenge in the tech industry really became, okay, well, if I want to go into the tech industry, what role makes a lot of sense for me? And initially, I was biasing towards doing business development or product management. I had a mentor who is an investor, and he knew my background, and he told me, hey, Subhan, I think you should really take a hard look at data science as an area. In 2012, Harvard Business Review had published an article saying that data scientist was the hottest job of the 21st century, and I thought it was like a lot of hype and not substantive. I started at his suggestion. I started looking into the area and realized that there was a lot of opportunity here, and that this was a substantive area to really begin to zoom in on. And it was a narrative that made a little bit more sense with my background, my technical background, than trying to go into product management or into business development. And so that's what I did. I got into a program called Inside Data Science. It helps people who have graduate degrees get into the field of data science. And then from there, I was able to get a role at Symantec, the cybersecurity company that makes Norton, as a data scientist. I ended up at eBay as a product manager, and now I'm at NVIDIA, actually doing technical business development for very large internet companies like Spotify, eBay. That a reality.
Yeah, to have a computer science degree. You need to have a computer science degree in order to enter into data science. And then being an economist, I also tell people that economists, statisticians, mathematicians, they deal a lot with all these issues, and they can also enter into it. Engineering, particularly disciplines, and people can come from any disciplines. And this is why this data camp, this boot camp that we've offered at Atom Camp. So what we are trying to do, that we are trying to make a diverse cohort where people are coming from different professional backgrounds as well. So the second thing, Subhan, we are also trying to guide people about the job market at the international level. So even in our training program, that's not just we are not only imparting skills, but we are also trying to mentor and groom them, mentor them, develop their network as well, and to guide them about the job market. So what we've been trying to advocate, that how applicants should develop their data science portfolios before they are applying for jobs. How important it is, especially if they are applying the job market very first time as a data scientist. And what do you advise for building such a data science portfolio before applying for international jobs, whether these are the gig jobs or permanent jobs in companies at the global level? So if you can just share your experience of recruitment at the international level.
Yeah, I don't know how the international level differs from what I did in the US. I'll just tell kind of what worked for me and what didn't work for me. I think one is around I think in general people will always look at what you did most recently and weigh that most heavily in applying for a job. So I very much felt that. I despite the fact I was in the Bay Area, despite the fact that I had a PhD from Stanford, the number one question I always got was, you have a background in civil engineering, why do you want to be a data scientist? I mean, no question about it. And so that was a very hard thing to overcome. And so the way I did overcome that was actually by doing the Inside Data Science program that I talked about. And so now the most recent thing that I had done was actually something highly relevant to the field that I was trying to get into. And then as a part of that, they had us actually do a data science project. And so I could actually talk to that project in job interviews and in conversations. And so the project that we did really helped. I don't actually think anybody really looked at the project that I interviewed with, but I think the ability to speak to it was authentic and real, and that actually changed the narrative for me very much. So I think the thing that you always want to be able to do is you want to be able to give some sort of substantive experience as to what you did most recently. And if you can do that, that shifts things in your favor. Because if you're stuck in the state of like being an unrelated field, that hurdle is always going to be really high to overcome. I think the only way you can do it without doing a project is like if again, like if you one, if you have a degree or you have a background in that particular area you're trying to get into. Two, I've seen a lot of people with physics backgrounds get into data science straight out of the physics background, and I think that the reason that happens is because a lot of those people do things that are extremely identical to data science in their jobs. So that would be like using Python, scraping data, stuff like that. And so, and so for them, it's a little bit more natural. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think if you can make your most recent thing be something highly relevant to where you're trying to go, that is going to drastically improve your likelihood of success and the ultimate outcomes.
Thank you, Subhan. So Subhan, I was just wondering, that because I understand you've been, involved in recruitment process as well. And what I understand, what are some of the things that candidates miss or they do not take into account when they apply for data science jobs and interviews? So what we're trying to do here, that sometimes when we give tips, we say that these are the do's and these are the don'ts. So what are some of the do's and don'ts when you are applying for a data science job or interviews?
I think one of the big do's or don'ts is both is I think people tend to fixate around title a lot and rule out or rule in a job based on the title. The truth is that it's highly dependent on the company and it's even highly specific on the team. So unless you find something substantive in the job description, and by substantive I mean like they're looking for a particular language that is not normally taught. So somebody's saying they want you to be able to code in C, just C, not C++, just C, like, yeah, maybe that's a kind of a disqualifier. But in general, I mean, a question I get a lot is like, oh, this title is business analyst, this title is data analyst, this title is data scientist. And I shouldn't apply to it because it's a data scientist, but I should apply to the data analyst one. When in reality, it's highly possible that all three of these jobs are actually identical in terms of the technical competence and preparation that you need to succeed in that job. So I think one is like really doing your homework and not ruling something out way too early, because I see so much of that. I'm actually surprised often. For me personally, I think my first job was like the job posting I saw was data scientist. When I got the job, it was like senior analyst. To be honest, who cares? It was the same job. It didn't really matter. But I could have ruled it out based on what I thought. So I think that's a really big one. So don't rule anything in or out until you've at least gotten some substantive information kind of around what it is. I think another one is kind of around in general, like I think it's I think a lot of people tend to apply to a lot of things. I've done this myself, and then just kind of hope for the best thing back. I think you can apply to 100 jobs and get like 5 interviews and 0 jobs. That's like one way to do it, and you don't get an outcome there. I found that actually when I focus on specific roles that are relevant to me and that I really want to get. So if I apply to like the last one was in the job market, I think I applied to like 5 jobs. I got 3 interviews and 2 offers. That was a much better outcome than when I was like, okay, let me apply to like 50 or 100 jobs and just see what happens, because I'm not being very intentional about what I'm doing. So I think that's another big one. And then I think the last one is really around just having some level of familiarity and research around the people that you're talking to, the company that you're talking to, a sense that like you've done your homework. I think this makes a really, really, really big difference, because in general, like there's technical knowledge, and that's really important, and that's sometimes obviously a pass sort of fail thing. But then beyond that, like assuming that you hit that bar, the people who really stand out are the ones that it's clear that they've actually looked into what is the company's top priorities right now, who are the people that they're talking to. For my current job at NVIDIA, I went through our CEO's like latest keynotes. I took notes on that. I had those notes with me in the interview process. And I was talking to my last interviewer, who was a senior VP at NVIDIA, and he was asking me very specific questions. But when I was able to reference those notes about specific NVIDIA products, it was really obvious to him that I'd done my homework. And then, things, obviously I got the job, and I've been here for 3.5 years now. So I think in general, those are 3 things that I would really recommend.
Yeah, thank you, Subhan. So Subhan, I understand, the data scientists have to analyze the data, then they have to, make sense of the data, they have to convey the data. So I understand that communication is very important for a data scientist, communication skill. What other soft skills you think are important for a data scientist? And including, networking with other data scientists, how important it is to be part of that community of data scientists if you want to enter into that career?
Yeah, so I think communication is definitely a big one. I think some people think it's just data science is just a technical job, but ultimately it's about providing business impact to the company that you work for. And so if you can't take it from an algorithm or a model, or the result of that model, and turn that into things that people can act on, that's not good. I think beyond that is to what you're asking around networking. I think this is a big one actually, because I've found that when you can kind of compare with the people how they're thinking about something or what technical solutions that they're using, that can be immensely valuable. For my first job at Symantec, I mean, it's been a while, I think 5 years now since I was there. I'm still in touch with all the people who I worked with there, and we exchange notes around what technical tools are we using, how are we thinking about a certain problem, what's the latest thing that's sort of going on. And I think when you have that that ground truth from other people, as opposed to just reading a news article or something like that, I think it's immensely valuable. So I think networking is ultimately it's only going to help you. And I think the other thing is like people tend to hire people that they know, and the better that they know you, the higher likelihood that they're going to hire you. And so if you're in a situation where you've worked with somebody before, obviously that's going to help drastically, even if you're switching fields. And and even so, even if you've been networking with somebody for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a job opening opens up on their team, they're probably more likely to want to try to give you a shot than somebody that they don't know at all. So in general, I think networking is huge, and I can't recommend it enough.
Ji Subhan, I was excited and looking forward to this question that I have for you. So this is something that, what does an average day look like at work for a data scientist? So this is will really help us to understand that how data scientists work and what kind of work they do actually in different companies.
Sure. So I think average day is, I mean, I think for me, a lot of it was definitely going through the data generally in SQL, structured query language, which navigates the database. So I think I spent probably at least half my day doing that. And then maybe an hour or two kind of around what things would look like after that. So creating a model in Python or along those lines. And then I think the remainder would be around, I'd say, communication. So that would include emails, meetings, talking to other people, stuff like that. So I think that's a general breakdown of what an average day would look like for data scientists.
Okay. So thank you. Subhan, the next question I wanted to ask you, that any advice that you want to give people who are actually just trying to enter into data science career? And at the same time, I got a question in the chat, and someone has asked that normally what is the timeline to learn and get hold of the data scientist career if someone is switching from mid-career? So maybe you can combine both questions, that at this particular point, that if you are aspiring to become a data scientist and you are a mid-career person, or you are a young graduate in any degree that you've done, either computer science or business or statistics or economics, then how much time it takes usually to learn these things and to enter into a data learning mean where you can enter into a decent level of data science job in any company.
Yeah, so I'll put this in the chat. But I think in terms of learning this stuff, I think learning SQL is really valuable. I think it's the most tested skill in the data science area. Learning Python or R is very valuable, because that begins to help you figure out how to build a model. What does that sort of look like? In general, I don't think it actually takes that long. For me personally, I mean, my PhD actually did not involve any data science at all in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it was only spreadsheets was the max of what I did in my PhD. But from the time I got my PhD to when I got my first job, it was about a year and a month, roughly. So that's what it took me to do it. I think you can learn the SQL and the Python or R relatively quickly. I think you can actually learn this in 3 to 6 months time frame. And there's a lot of great resources on the internet on how to do this. The one I posted is, I think, paid platforms like Udemy, stuff like that. There is a significant amount of content on YouTube that's free completely. That is actually quite good. So I definitely recommend that. But I think the way that you want to do it if you're making a career switch is, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from like any sort of like technical field, I think it's obviously going to be easier. If you're like, I don't know, like a writer or something out there, then that's going to be a much harder switch to pull off. I've seen it done; it's not possible, but it's really specific to the situation. So I think in general, you want to put yourself in a strong position. I think learning SQL is extremely valuable, because I've pretty much been asked about it every single job I've ever interviewed for a data science role, and it actually means something in terms of your efficacy to be able to do the job. With Python or R, it can actually be a little hit or miss. It's a little bit harder to test, but two, it's harder to tie to like how good the person would actually be at the job itself. But SQL actually does have a very direct correlation with, if you're good at SQL, you're probably going to be good at the job, which is why I think it's tested so much. So yeah, I don't know if I answered all the questions, but if there's something I missed, let me know.
Yeah, I think the second question was also pretty much relevant to what you've already answered to. So Subhan, what we are doing, we've actually recently offered this boot camp, and initially what we had a plan that You can learn both R and Python in that bootcamp, but then people advised it's better to just focus on one of the languages, and that's better instead of asking people to learn both. And then we ended up doing Python actually. So that's the compulsory, 1 month module that we've offered in our bootcamp. So if we have to compare, between R and Python, what do you think that if someone just excels in R, is it sufficient that without any Python knowledge to become a data scientist? And this I'm asking because we also offer short courses in R, and people often also tell us, why do you offer R? You should offer Python. But people who are not coming from computer science background, they are usually much more comfortable with R as compared to Python. So if you have any advice on that, for people who are trying to enter into data science career.
I'd say just pick one and kind of go with it. I think the advantages and the disadvantages of each one is, I think R started out, I think primarily in academia amongst statisticians, and still exists today. Python really had no place in this area until, I don't know, maybe like 13 years ago. Pandas came out, scikit-learn came out. These are popular libraries people use for data frames and machine learning inside Python. So I think the main, there's not really a big trade-off. I think if you're learning Python, it's probably more likely that if a model is written in Python, it can be deployed to production more easily. But I've never really seen that. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think the advantage of Python is probably if you learn Python and you want to do things related to like deep learning, so like PyTorch, TensorFlow, other things along those lines. Obviously, it's all the same language, so it's a little bit more easy. I don't think PyTorch and TensorFlow are supported in R. But that being said, personally, I actually learned R first, and then I learned Python after that. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I would just say in the initial part, just learn one, learn it well, and then try to figure out, if you should try to do another one. I think the worst thing you can do is not make a decision, try to learn both at the same time, and get super confused, end up nowhere. I think most rational, reasonable people, if somebody can do most of what they need to in either R or Python, they're not going to express kind of a preference. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Subhan. So if participants have any question, they can raise their hand, and then they can ask question directly to Subhan. So if they can raise their hand, so then I'll allow you to ask questions. So looks like everyone has understood, Subhan, you so well. You are a good teacher, looks like.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah. So just anyone, if you want to ask question, you don't want to raise hand, you just unmute yourself and ask questions. We are not many people here. So if there is no question, then I think we'll conclude it here, Subhan. And thank you very much for joining us. So we'll post this, there is, amazing session. So people only want to, admire you. They don't want to ask you questions.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's great. Any last advice you want to give? Because there are people here who are trying to enter into data science career. And, what do you think about the job market around the world? And what do you think about the statistics which we have? Everyone is saying that there is going to be 30% growth in job market in the next 10 years. And as Internet of Things and many other, digitalization, digital integration is increasing, then we are going to get more and more, jobs of data scientists. But then there are other theories as well. With this AI and everything, many of these data analytics, all these things will be automated, and over the time, then these jobs will reduce. So any perspective on the global job market for data scientists?
yeah, I mean, I think when I got into it, whatever, 7 years ago, it was, I thought like this is a growth area. This is an area where there's going to be a lot of opportunity. What does that look like? Unequivocally, that has very much been the case. And I would say we're still early. So I think in general, around specialization of skills, you always want to be in an area where, the more specialized and you are, and the more demand that there's going to be for that particular skill set, the better off you're going to be. That ultimately means that you have a rare commodity, and then that allows you to create optionality for yourself. So personally, it's been amazing for me. I think getting into this field has been great. It's grown drastically. It just keeps growing. The demand there is significant. I think in general, if I talk to people and although in the US, most people that work in the field would say that there are not enough qualified people to take the jobs that we have. That's been the case in every job that I've had so far. So I think the opportunities are massive, and I think the more that you can build a compelling case for yourself, and build the skill set and give that the track record, the better off you're going to be. And I think I'd say it can be tough in the early parts, but ultimately, it's the people who go through the tough early parts that come out on top later on. And so I'd say get moving, attack this a lot. And I think if you pull it off, there's a lot of growth ahead. There's a lot of career opportunities ahead. There's a lot of potential to grow and ultimately put yourself in a great position for the long term. So I'd say just get moving, ask people, network, and learn as much as you can, and it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Subhan. I think that's a wonderful advice. So there is one Usman Rashid. He wants to ask question about our boot camp. So go ahead, Usman.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि अगर ये बूट कैंप है जैसे कि 6 months लॉन्ग है, तो ये हम इसमें मतलब एक बूट कैंप करने के बाद इस पोजीशन में हो जाएंगे कि मार्केट में एक जॉब लैंड कर सकें एज अ मतलब जूनियर या असिस्टेंट टू डेटा साइंटिस्ट, कि ये सिर्फ बेसिक्स कवर करेगा कि हम मतलब एज अ अभी हमारा पोर्टफोलियो बिल्ड होगा और उसके बाद हमें फिर खुद से कुछ मेहनत करके फिर मार्केट में आना पड़ेगा? मतलब मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि ये था मेरे दिमाग में कि इतने जगह हो जाएंगे कि नहीं. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll explain you. Your question is regarding Atom Camp, but Subhan, do you understand Urdu?
Not well enough to have understood what he asked.
Okay, that's fine. So he's asking about our, data science boot camp that we've offered, and what he's asking that this is a 6 month boot camp, and whether the participants will be able to land at a job, regarding data science after this boot camp. So Usman, I'd just like to say, every job, whatever you are doing, whatever, field that you are in, that's usually a lifelong learning. So it doesn't mean that learning path ends actually after one boot camp. Like Subhan is mentioning, he learned it, he did his PhD. Even if I'm coming from economics background, every day is a new reading, new complexity. But yes, data science boot camp this is not something that you are going to learn everything in the world on data science, but this is a preliminary skill set that you will be acquiring that will be enough for you to get a job in data science field. So that is our focus, and the focus is it's not just about the skill development. What we are going to do, that we are going to give you data sets that industry is using to analyze, to resolve their own problems. And there will be user cases as well. Then there will be people who are already heading data science teams. And so this is something that what we are trying to do, and then arranging speaker series, trying to, sort of help them in building portfolios, guiding them how to develop a CV, and then training them in interviews, building their networks. So we'll do many things regarding the job market. And yes, our effort will be that will help you to find a job, but then obviously you'll have to make your own efforts as well. So it's not possible that we'll say that, okay, we'll give you a job. So we'll prepare you for a job actually. And that's what we are trying to do. Subhan, do you want to, add to anything that I've said, though it's relating to us, but if you want to just guide about that, whether any boot camp can help or how they can enter into the job market.
Yeah, I mean, I think boot camps can help, for sure. It helped me. I did it myself. I would say, at the end of the day, a boot camp, no boot camp can help you get a job, can guarantee you a job. Even the one I did, everybody had a PhD from a US institution. Some people got jobs immediately. Some people, it took them up to a year or more after that. So at the end of the day, no boot camp, no person, no entity can guarantee you getting a job. I would say the way to think about it is it's one part in your professional development, but ultimately you have to do the work, and you have to be able to distinguish yourself. And when you go for a job interview, the boot camp isn't there, the mentors aren't there. It's just you. And so so all they can do, all the boot camp can do, all the mentors can do, all the network can do is just prepare you for the job interview itself. They can't actually do, get you the offer letter. So ultimately you've got to put the work in. You've got to take control of your own destiny, and use the boot camp and use other people to help you be in the driver's seat of your own career. So ultimately, but I still think doing boot camps is great. I'm sure the AppCamp boot camp is great. And you can put that on your resume. It's definitely going to change the narrative for you and help you. But getting the actual job, that will always be the responsibility of the person applying for the job, which is you.
Yeah, thank you, Subhan. I think that's a better answer than what I did actually, and it will also help me. I'll reframe my sales pitch of this bootcamp actually based on your answer, that this is one part of your professional development. That's a good answer. Sir,
Sure.
could you please guide a little about data science skill set for people working in social sciences field? So this is another question, that if someone is coming from social science field, then probably they want to know that how can they enter into the data science field?
Yeah, this is a common one. I've seen this a lot. So when I did Insight, people had the generic breakdown of people by background was a third had physics backgrounds, a third had engineering or some sort of applied science, and then a third had what I would call social science backgrounds. So this would be degrees in English, philosophy, psychology, sociology, stuff like that. My sister is doing her PhD in communications. I think the way to think about this is that social sciences is actually still a pretty good field. A lot of people in social sciences use statistical methods to deal with the volume of data that they have to go through in order to understand and answer social science questions. I think in social sciences in particular, OR is very prevalent. So I think at the end of the day, you'll be able to make that narrative about like, okay, this is what I did, and this is how it relates to data science. But it's a really big area people switch from, and I think it's actually a very doable one. I think there's like some sort of like cursory thinking at first, like, oh, like, psychology, sociology is so different from engineering or computer science. But most, I think what you have to be able to do is you have to be able to present yourself as a person with technical credibility. And I think if you can do that, and a lot of social sciences people can do that because a lot of them get jobs as data scientists or machine learning engineers, then you're going to be good. So I think at the end of the day, if you've been able to do some of the statistical stuff in your social science experience, that is really, really, really going to help you. And I think it can actually be an easier transition than one might think.
Yeah, thank you, Subhan. If there is no other question, then we can conclude it here. And you can always get back to us, and you can find Subhan on, I think he has already shared his link. What that link is about, Subhan, earlier you shared something.
That was a Google link,
Okay.
Google Sheets link of a bunch of online resources around SQL, Python, and R.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll also share it with other participants as well. Zumar, I think you have noted down that link, and we can also share with other participants who are interested in learning data science. So thank you, Subhan. It was a wonderful conversation, and looking forward to hearing more from you about data science as we